Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today is episode number 30, Soul Retrieval and Reclaiming Lost Parts of Yourself. Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today. We are going to be talking about soul retrieval and the role that it plays in my profession and what it looks like. I'm going to tell you some stories and hopefully answer some questions. Soul retrieval is a huge part of shamanic healing and shamanic practice, and I have a lot of really cool experiences around it. So, soul retrieval is an important topic because everyone has soul loss. I'm not sure that we ever stop having soul loss, even as we get into our older years or have the majority of ourself come into our body fully. It's a practice that simply continues to unfold, and new parts are always revealing itself, right? The healing path is a spiral path, it is not a linear beginning to end kind of path. So some parts that we often talk about or retrieve in soul retrieval work can be from childhood, they can be from adulthood, they can be parts that were never here to begin with. And all of these aspects can either be really kind of small and light and superficial, or they can be extremely deep and need the assistance of plant medicine in order to retrieve them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So at this point, I've personally had a number of soul retrievals in all different kinds of contexts, and I'm going to share a little bit about them with you today. So one of the coolest ones, in my opinion, happened a few years ago when I was called to go out to rural Washington for my birthday. I had never been out there. I didn't know why I was going. It was a super strong call and just one of those things that I knew I had to do, which is, a huge part of my job. So I got this cabin in the middle of a horse ranch. It is like horse country out there. As soon as I started driving to this cabin, which was about 4 hours away, I went into altered space. And what I mean by that is you very much feel like you've taken a substance, if that's the only thing you compare it to. Um, Much like you're under the influence, you're not in your right mind, you're not fully in your body, you're seeing multiple dimensions, basically in a trance state. This does happen to me on a regular basis, and I can induce it, and sometimes it just happens on its own if there's stuff going on that I'm not really in control of. Again, part of the job. So I get to this cabin. As soon as I put my stuff down, they're like, all right, spirit. When I say they, I mean spirits, God, universe. Sometimes it's all of those things, sometimes it's one, but you hear me say they a lot. Uh, they tell me, lay down, get comfortable. As soon as I lay down, the trance state really starts to deepen. I'm greeted by all the animals on the land, and I'm able to thank them for coming and holding space for me. I got the message that the journey was about to start, and then I spent the next 15 hours in bed. All through that evening and night, I was visited by natives of the land, by animals from the surrounding farms, and a circle of women who were there singing and drumming for me. I also had a personal friend show up with her rattle, and she was working over me for hours that evening. Now, through this process, I really did have a lot of hallucination, a lot of emotion release. I drifted in and out of dream state for all of those hours. And this part of the ceremony process, the soul retrieval process, was very clearly a cleansing and extraction. Um, and this is like basically clearing out the space where the soul part should reside, but we have jammed other things into it. So when you have soul loss, there becomes a vacancy, and then we put other things in its place. So extraction or cleansing is always performed in conjunction with a soul retrieval. Um, and then at the end of that first 15-hour ceremony, I felt really exhausted. I felt really empty. And I was told to go out in town and get some food and stretch my legs and then come back later. So I did, and Ellensburg, Washington is a super cute little town. I had a really good time. just wandering around for a few hours. And then when I got back to the Airbnb, I was guided to perform an underworld journey. So this is, or underworld, lower world. This is a common shamanic practice where we basically go to a quote unquote lower world to navigate certain terrains, talk with certain spirits. Um, I'm not going to go too much into that today. And I was supposed to go there to perform a soul retrieval on myself. Now, in my underworld, there is a cave that I've visited many times on behalf of ceremony participants and clients. And there's a cave that it's often challenging to get in and out of because there's like animals and forces and energies that try to distract me or scare me off as I make my way inside, which is not uncommon in spiritual work. But you need to do a lot of negotiating and stuff like that before, if you haven't reached the point where you've really cultivated deep relationship with the spirits, um, that can be a thing that comes up and prevents you. So it took me a while to get inside this cave. Um, but once I went in, I had to call on my soul part. So the cave was pitch black. I was unable to see anybody clearly. This is something I later found out was known as the Cave of Lost Children in one of Sandra Ingerman's books, and I found that really helpful and validating. So finally, in this state, I'm able to turn on like a flashlight, and I see this small girl who wants to come to me, but she's scared. So I have to negotiate with her. I tell her about the games that we're going to play together and all the joy that's in my life, trying to really demonstrate that it's no longer a scary place for her to be. So I tell her about the family that I have and the pets. And this again takes some time because the kids that we lock away are terrified of the things that they saw and the experiences that they had. That's why they're in, this cave of lost children. So after negotiating with her for a period of time, she finally tells me that she'll come under one condition and that I must let her bring the cat spirit that's with her. She tells me that I must get a cat as soon as I return from where I'm where I'm currently staying. And I talked about this a little bit in my Animal Familiar podcast. That cat is now my cat. His name is Mr. Baggins. But that was a condition of this soul retrieval, which is also pretty common in soul retrieval. When we retrieve parts of ourselves, we always ask, like, is there something that you need? Is there something I have to do to make sure that you stay with me? And sometimes they'll make it a condition right off the bat before you even have the opportunity to negotiate with them. There's also some times where the soul part will flat out refuse and say, like, no, your life is too stressful, or you don't have space, or you don't play enough, or your relationship is too painful, and it will straight up say, I'm not returning until you fix these things. So after I retrieved this lost child, I think she's about 3 or 4. She definitely left when my cat died when I was a little kid. It was a traumatic experience for me because it was our only pet and nobody told me that he was going to die. And I got home one day and he was just gone. And I still actually have vivid memories of that day since the soul retrieval. I did not have my memories before that. So after I retrieve her from the cave, she very clearly like tells me that these are requirements. Like you have to get a cat. And then she also wants me to create a necklace using her favorite types of beads and I must wear it to honor her. And so I promise to do this and I wrap up the soul retrieval. And upon my return home a few days later, I do have a lot more memories and emotions come up around this child part, as well as around the time that my cat died. I did also go to the store and buy these beads, which was shown to me kind of in a psychic vision. Like, these are the kind of beads that she wants. And they're letter beads, brightly colored, and she wanted me to put the words me, play, happy, love. It was kind of like a mantra, or, like as a little kid, they don't have full sentence structuring abilities. So it was very childlike necklace, and I wore that for a long period of time, and then kept it on my altar. And eventually, actually, a couple years ago, I was asked by a piece of land to surrender that necklace into the land, and I had to bury it. So really interesting kind of full circle moment there. So that was my first like really big soul retrieval experience in the classic soul retrieval kind of setup. And I'm sharing that with you because I was actually in training not too long ago, attempting to deepen my skill set, and the teacher told me that what I described was impossible. She actually accused me of lying, and that was really interesting because this experience was very, very vivid, very impactful, very important to me. Um, and I'm surprised that there are so many shamanic teachers out there that don't have like an open mind to what's possible in this work. So that's why I share this story, even though it's deeply personal. One of the other soul retrieval stories I'd like to share is when I went to Ireland a few years ago. I think I shared about this in my travel podcast, my shamanic travel podcast. Um, I had a really intense trip. I had a lot of emotions moving, a lot of psychic experiences. But on the last, like 2 or 3 days before I left Ireland, which is very common for me when I travel, um, to have a soul retrieval. It happens when I'm nearing the end of my trip, and it's like this message from the land that says, like, you came here, you cleared the energy that was here, that was connected to you. It's almost like a reward for answering the calling and then doing the work. And I had a really fascinating part that was dropped back in after that trip. And it was a part of me that was bound and gagged and like nearly beheaded. And she had the energy of like a prostitute or a harlot, very beautiful, desirable woman. And when I was having visions of her, she was literally being uncovered out of a barrel that had been buried into the ground. And I was surrounded by men, and they were all like trying to cover her up and trying to cover up her death. And I realized that there was a masculine, a toxic masculine part of me who played a role in her death. I'm still not really sure how to digest that soul retrieval, because, death is not forever and it's also metaphorical. And was she reborn? Was this a idea that died? I'm not really sure, but it was an unearthing of an aspect of me so that the energy could be returned to my body. Very different types of soul retrieval here, but they are equally as important. And I'll talk about some other examples throughout the podcast as well. So, first, I want to address what is soul loss. So, soul loss is when something happens that you're unable to fully digest or experience, and it results in a part of your quote unquote soul fragmenting off and hiding in a closet. Now, there are many different complexities and layers and possibilities here. Sometimes, if you're a magical person, you store that soul in a pocket dimension that lives next to you. Sometimes it's in a closet in your childhood home, and we have to go back through time and retrieve it. Sometimes it's on another planet. Like, it's not cut and dry, but the basis or the foundation of it remains the same. Something happens that you cannot process, you cannot digest. It may not even necessarily be traumatic in the way that we understand trauma to be, as human adults, but that's how soul loss happens. There are so many signs and symptoms of soul loss. Like I said, everybody has it. It's pretty much at the root cause of everything. If you're not here fully, you're not embodying your full energy, you're not showing up in the world fully, you're going to have health issues, you're going to have depression, anxiety, addiction, a lot of physical ailments. Like, you wouldn't even believe how much is connected to soul loss. And I think it's kind of a deep belief in the shamanic realm that soul loss is the cause of all problems. And I think I would have to agree with that. And another thing that might be an indicator is like the PTSD, the difficulty moving on from trauma, nervous system issues. I mean, the list just goes on. So the impact of soul loss is it's emotional, it's physical, and it's also spiritual. It can be mild or it can be severe, and it can also change. Everything could feel fine, and then one day you're like, man, I really feel like a big part of me is missing. I really resonate with this idea of soul retrieval. It just wasn't time until now. Remember, shamanic healing is not linear. So, the purpose of soul retrieval and shamanic healing is to retrieve the lost soul fragments. It's to make you whole. This is the definition of healing. Healing is wholeness. And so, anything that prevents you from being whole, such as parts of you that are locked away somewhere, that's a need for healing. Sorry, I got tripped up there. Um, So traditionally, I understand that soul retrieval was performed by the shaman on behalf of the person needing the retrieval. As in, the shaman lays down next to the person and does the whole journey from them, blows the soul back into the body, or does whatever they do with it. Now, this is something that I have done for people before, but it's not preferred. It's not preferred by me, by my clients, or by the spirits, and it's very disempowering. There are some times when you need someone to do the soul retrieval for you, but in most cases, you can actually do it yourself, or the spirits can facilitate it for you. One of the cool things that I found over the years in my work is that when we work with mushrooms in the ceremony setting, there's often like a mass soul retrieval. There's something about opening up that space and being who I am that when we get started, sometimes like everyone will cross the threshold and then I'll see 14, 15, 16 soul parts enter the room and they all go back into people's bodies at the same time. It's so freaking cool. I don't even have to do anything. We just have to show up with the intention to do shamanic healing, and the soul parts just start flying through the room. Sometimes they do need to stop and like tell me what they need, or they need to tell me to relay messages, or the person has to do homework, and sometimes they just pop right back into the body. Many times there's an emotional or physical release that accompanies this soul retrieval or the return of that soul part. Um, and occasionally, repressed memories also return at that time. So, when we're talking about where soul parts go, I have seen them go to many different places. I feel like I'm consistently being taught new things about where soul parts can hide. Like I said, from closets in childhood bedrooms to like under the ocean floor, to pocket dimensions, to other galaxies, to other planets, sometimes just in like metaphorical places. I'll give a couple examples of that in a minute. And in the retrieval process, one of the things that one of my teachers, or one of the people I tried to learn from, taught me was about using or working with spirit allies or guides to do the retrieval. Um, I've never been successful with that. Every time I've tried to take a class or learn about soul retrieval from someone, the spirits are always like, no, that's not how we do it. That's not how we prefer to do it. Stop trying to learn other people's way and let us teach you how to do soul retrieval. So if you start to work with the spirit world, it will show you how to do these things. There is no need for formal training, in my opinion. But sometimes we do need formal training on how to appropriately interact with the spirit world. So the soul retrieval process is different for everybody and every experience. As I said, traditionally the shaman performed it on you, but typically I do not do it that way. I think I may have a handful of times outside of medicine ceremony, and that's a totally different topic. So, what happens during a session? Sometimes the spirits perform it, sometimes I perform it, sometimes I guide you to perform it, or you do it spontaneously. Sometimes we need to work with a plant spirit because it's an epic piece and it's like in a place that I don't have access to, but they can open up a portal for me to go there. I see soul retrieval a lot in my mushroom ceremonies when somebody is dropping into earth for the first time. So if you continually have that like longing to be somewhere else in the galaxy, you really don't want to be here, chances are you're actually not fully here yet, and that's why you feel very disconnected. And so soul retrieval will happen in a multi-dimensional or multi-galaxy way, and I'll be retrieving your soul part from wherever its original place is. Now, some people can feel it immediately when the soul part comes back in. Sometimes they can't, and it's like a slow process. Integration looks different for everybody. I'd say the most important thing is to do any homework that they give you and to honor what comes up. So, a lot of times, like cravings for certain foods or activities will surface, and you absolutely have to honor that because it's a part of you that's been denied those things for so long. Um, yeah. So integration, coaching and shamanic support can help when needed. Most of the times it's just time and doing what you were told to do, and most people just don't do that. Homework, for whatever reason, continues to be the hardest part of the work. Now, there are some common fears associated with doing soul retrieval work. Some people are concerned that it will change them, and like, absolutely it will. And that's not a bad thing. Soul retrieval will never make your life worse or harder. Um, it's always an expansion, it's always in addition to the awesomeness that's already present. Some people are concerned that they won't feel anything, and that is a valid concern. Sometimes we don't feel anything, and sometimes, I reflect it back for the client, and they have a chance to sit with it, and it won't be for months later that they'll be like, okay, yeah, I get it. I felt that. But it's not always an in your face feeling. So this isn't about like forcing healing that needs to happen. It's more about calling in restoration. It's calling in an opening. It's calling back your energy, resolving whatever break happened. Now, if you want to tell if the soul retrieval was successful, I mean, mostly that's about your intuition. Go with your gut, but also be patient with the process. Um, I did have an experience with a shamanic practitioner once that I paid to do a soul retrieval for me. And it was really interesting because they were very over the top about the results, and I felt absolutely nothing. I felt nothing. I paid a lot of money. And then kind of later found out that they were pretty much a charlatan. And, it kind of gives people who are genuinely doing this work a really bad rep. It's unfortunate. I have yet to have someone successfully perform a soul retrieval ceremony with me, but not to worry, the spirits have that under control. Um, yeah, I will also share in a different podcast about the benefits of working with a shaman in psilocybin ceremony, because that is where a lot of soul retrieval takes place. Um, One of my more recent soul retrievals in ceremony that was kind of fun was about somebody's inner child. So we were in the middle of the ceremony, and I have my jobs. I'm doing what I do, and all of a sudden, I get this huge vision of a castle, and I'm supposed to scale the wall of the castle. I'm supposed to make it to like this room on the inside, and I encountered this little girl, and she's decorating for her birthday party. Like, she is held up in this castle. There's moats and walls and other things preventing people from getting in. And she's celebrating all on her own, keeping everybody out because the world outside is not safe. And I had to negotiate with this child, and it was really interesting. The woman who was in the ceremony is now one of my friends, and I've worked with her multiple times. But just to see the kind of things that changed in her life after that ceremony, for better or for worse, were epic in proportion. And I continue to see the aftermath of that soul retrieval process, and I love that. It makes me so happy. Now, this is where I would love to ask an audience if I had people who would respond to me about if you've ever had this experience spontaneously in your dream or doing something where you feel like you felt whole again afterwards, like a part of you had come back into yourself. I would love to start a conversation, get some feedback. Um, it's really an interesting thing that we don't have the opportunity to talk about, and I think a lot of people do experience, but they don't know they experience it. So, in terms of knowing if you're ready for a soul retrieval, you just know. I mean, some people hear this concept and they're like, yes, I need that. And sometimes, it helps to work with a practitioner who can identify soul loss. That was something that I started to see not too long after I went to massage therapy school. When I put my hands on someone, I can see the percentage of them that's present in the body on earth. and the percentage of them that is somewhere else. And sometimes it's soul retrieval stuff. And sometimes it's like, oh, we're just not here yet. And I can't go retrieve it because it's not ready to be dropped in. So, if the idea of soul retrieval piques your interest, read about it. There's a great book by Sandra Ingerman about it. Um, it's called Soul Retrieval: Mending the Fragmented Self. There's a good one by Alberto Vallaldo where there's like self-guided practices. I also do a soul retrieval course from time to time through my meetup group online, and do have recordings that I'm hoping to put in an online course at some point. Um, so, the ways that you can begin preparing for this type of work would be basic shamanic journey work. Like, start doing some journeying. There's great resources on Insight Timer and YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel with free journey work guided by me. It's Sacred Heart Medicine on YouTube. Start working with a shaman, start doing some dream work. All of it will get you primed and prepped for that kind of experience. As far as doing dream work, I absolutely love Robert Moss, and he wrote the book Dreaming the Soul Back Home. That's a cool one related to soul retrieval as well. Highly recommend his books. You can also do some daily practices to call your energy back, like breath work or visualization, connecting to your ancestors, spending time in nature. And all of this will help begin this process. But I will tell you, I think most people, they can do a lot of soul retrieval work on their own. And then we always hit a point with all of our healing modalities where we need someone else to help us. We need someone else to hold space or to do the thing. This is just part of the healing path. It's not meant to be done completely solo. So, soul retrieval, super common. We all need it. It's constantly happening to us throughout our life. It's a really fun and fascinating topic. And the aftermath of a soul retrieval is always just so yummy and fulfilling and exciting. It's always exciting when we uncover new parts of ourselves. So I encourage you to explore soul retrieval in your own healing process if it resonates with you. Maybe pick up one of the books that I recommended and reach out for support if you need it, either with me or with someone else. So thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.